This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome, everyone. We're continuing in the Mishnas Sofrim. Mishnas Sofrim is the end of Siman Lamed Vav, about the proper way to write the oisios. We're on the second to last line on the first column. The Mishnah Berurah just brought 5 lines from the bottom that to separate 2 letters that are touching are permitted, and it's not considered Shelo Kesidran to go back and separate 2 letters that are touching, because if they have the tzuras ha'oisios, or for example, a yud and of the aleph, or of the shin, or the ayin, or the regel of the taf that are not touching, and the kid could read it and it basically looks like that letter. So the halacha is you could go back and fix it because it has the ikar tzuras ha'os. Says the Mishnah Berurah and the Mishnah Sofrim. V'yira, it would seem the kol zeh davka me'ein nikar preidas lahadya. The only time you could fix a letter that its joints are disattached is only if it's not outright apparent. Ha'im nikar lahadya, if it's outright apparent, afagav dehatinoik kairekain, even though the kid says yes, aleph, shin, ayin, kivan she'ein surasa aleha, since its image is not on it, havi kaisev Shelo Kesidran. That's considered writing Shelo Kesidran. Now Rabbi Kiveger disagrees, and we had this before in Siman Lamed Beis. V'hagon Rabbi Kiveger b'chidusha palagaza, v'chein beirarnu sham b'Siman Lamed Beis halacha v'ayin sham shebirarnu shebe'eza davar gam hagon Rabbi Kiveger moedel prima gadim. Look over there, in what situation even Rabbi Kiveger would agree that it would be an issue. Now, in other words, like this, the Mishnah Sofrim is saying that if it's ein nikar preidasai, you could go back and fix it. But if it's nikar preidasai, you cannot go back and fix it, even though a kid is going to be reading it properly. Now, he brings here that Rabbi Kiveger argues on this. Let's see further, because this is the Pri Megadim's opinion. In other words, the Pri Megadim holds that if it's recognizable outright, you can't go back and fix it. If it's not recognizable outright, then you could fix it. When could you go out and fix it? That's if the missing thing doesn't make it look like a different letter. When could you fix it? When it's not nikar lahadya, that's if it doesn't look like a different letter. But if, let's say, the yud or the tzadi, if it's not touching, it looks like a yud and a nun, or a ches, shabaregel smala yesh hefresh dak bin regel hagag. Or, for example, a ches, where the leg, if it's not touching, the roof, the nerakehei, then az afilu im ira shatina karla is ketzurasa rila ein mile taken mishum delay kesidran. Okay. So now he's qualifying this din that if it's not nikar lahedya, you're allowed to fix it. That's only if it has the tsura of the letter. But if it starts to look like any other letter, you cannot go and fix it. The dasa prima gadim azeh, da afilu im ein nikar predasan lahedya vatina kara gam ken la'ois loy mahani tikon. The prima gadim holds that even in this past case, meaning not the last thing that he said. The last thing he said, everyone agrees is no good. But the Pri Megadim is of the opinion that when it's ein nikar preidasei lahedya, and the child reads the letter properly, Tikkun will not help. So, who holds that tikkun will help? That's Rabbi Kiva Eger. That's the machlokes Rabbi Kiva Eger and the Pri Megadim. That when it's ein nikar predasai lahedya, Rabbi Kiva Eger holds that you'd be allowed to fix it. It seems like Pri Megadim holds you cannot. Va'ayin b'siman lamed beish shabirarnu sham da'al kalpanim b'shas hadchak yesh lahakal b'zed b'hani tikkun. That at least b'shas hadchak tikkun will help. Okay, here's another rule. Here's another rule. Now we're going to get up the picture here. Okay, here we go. You ready for this? The Pri Megadim writes another rule. Anytime you're not writing, let's say you're just erasing, or continuing ink, if you go back and either erase or extend, it's not Shaloi Kesidran. Hamashal, here's the mashal. La'avoisecha malevav. Let's say the word la'avoisecha is spelled male. Let's say you spelled it male with a vav. It's not supposed to be male with a vav. You spelled lamed aleph vez, taf yud, chaf. And you spelled with a vav. So now you have to go back and erase the vav. So limchay kavav. But now it looks like two words. It looks like la'av and secha. So you know what you do? Now you erase and you extend the vase. You extend the vase. So you say, wait a second. This is Shaloi Kesidran. I'm erasing and I'm extending. Meshicha lav klum of it. Meshicha is not doing anything. Don't tell me I made a base because it was a base before. It just, I made it that it was two words, and then I fixed it. That's not considered Shaloi Kesidran. Aval, vadai, imasa beis metchila kitzuras nun. If originally I made the beis like a nun, kefufa, you made it like a regular nun. V'acher kach mashcha lebeis, and then you extend it to be a beis like in diagram 2, where you originally wrote la'a noisecha, and you realize, first of all, I'm not supposed to make the vav. I have to erase the vav. Oh, and I made a nun. Let me extend it to a vase. Not, you're out. Have a Shaloi Kesidran. Let's say I wrote the letter properly. And then it got ruined. Since the tzuras ha'ois is ruined, was nullified. Why? The b'chol sha'ah be'inon Kesidran. You need it to be Kesidran at all times. V'loi dami lemukaf gevil deloy kapid kra rak ashas ksiva tabashakasav b'fnim ba'irech. This is not like the requirement that it has to be surrounded by parchment, which we say that's only an issue when you wrote it. But if later something happened and it's not mukaf gevil, you could fix it. That's because the Torah is only makbid on mukaf gevil at the time of the ksiva. Mashein kain Kesidran has to be at all times. Sometimes making a dot is an issue of Shaloi Kesidran. Let's say you write al yarecha. Ukshartem la'ois al yarecha. You should make a sign on your arrows, or whatever the word yarecha means, on your smicha. I don't know, and then you realize, oh, I made a reish. Now I have to square off with ink. Then su mifsal mishum Shaloi Kesidran. Now it's going to be a problem of Shaloi Kesidran. Haklal kol she'ein suras ala. Anytime the letter does not have the right form, v'koisiv nekuda, and you make even a dot. Yesh mazeh mishum Shaloi Kesidran. Okay, one more rule, and then I know it's going to be very hard for everyone to sleep tonight because tomorrow we're going to be learning the letter Aleph. There's a big day tomorrow. I know before you were 3 years old and they brought you to yeshiva, you couldn't sleep the whole night, but you haven't seen anything like you thought you learned the Aleph then? No. Tomorrow's the big day. Okay, another rule from the Prima Gadim about Chak Tuchos. Oid Dvarim Achadim Me'in Chak Tuchos. Kol Makom Shenemar V'Kasav. Anytime the Torah says you should write, Kagan B'Tfilin, Mezuzos, Sefer Torah, get, Hasel By Chak Tuchos, which means you have to write it. You can't allow the letters to form by erasing. Let's say just the Kutsa Shayud was formed through Chak Tuchos. Let's say on the word B'nai. So what you did is you made a very thick top of the Yud. So you want to scratch off the bottom to make a little thorn coming out of the bottom or a thorn coming out of the top. Ma'akev. Since without the thorn, the letter is not kosher. Now, what about signing a get with Chak Tuchos? B'chasimas eidei haget b'Chak Tuchos ein be'shmuel b'amanazer b'siman kuflamed oischap b'makom igun kosher. It's the matter of aguna will be kosher. Af agav d'loik sivbahu v'kasav, even though the Torah doesn't say v'kasav, but nevertheless, by chasimas eidei haget, makpidin l'chatchila k'may b'chol haget. Fine. V'hinei inyan Chak Tuchos tzarchas v'zer b'ma'od. Regarding Chak Tuchos, the Sofer has to be very careful. The Inyanav Aruchin, it's a very lengthy subject. Siman Lamed Beis, if Yadzayin Yeches, Ach Nekoid, Haklal Abiyatcha. Grab a hold of the following rule. Ki Hafachu Mishalai Kesidran. Basically, the laws of Chak Tuchos are the exact opposite of Shalai Kesidran. Shesham Goyrer Umaychek Umayshech Loi Hava Shalai Kesidran. There, when it comes to out of order, erasing and scraping and extending is not Shalai Kesidran b'chanal. Now, what's the difference between goyrer and moichek? Goyrer is when it's dried ink. Moichek is wet ink. Uv'chak tuchos nahafleichu. Goyrer u'moichek u'moishech. Anytime you scrape, erase, or draw, if you're not doing an act in the actual letter, u'mashlima adayin havachak tuchos. Hadimyan. Here's an example. Beis shenasus kitsurasa. Let's say you have a good beis. Oy samach or v'kaf v'chadam shenafal tipas diyai. A little droplet of ink fell in. L'toich hacholal achar shenigmar behechsher. V'nifsat surasa idezai. Here, look, you have the letter la'avoisacha, and a little ink fell in the vase, and now it looks like a pei la'aposacha. The kid might read it la'avoisacha, but we see it doesn't look like a vase, looks like a pei. Then it's not going to help to scrape off the dot, because you're making a vase not by writing it, but by removing. Once the letter is pasal, batlak siva kamaisa. The original writing is batal. Va'ata have a chak tuchos. Now you're engraving the inside. You're not doing an act in the letter. You're just scraping. You're scraping the interior of the letter. Even if afterwards you draw the base. So you'll say, okay, I'll scrape the interior of the pei, and now I'll do a maisa to the guf of the letter by extending it. Hey, pal, you have a vase. You're not doing anything by extending it. You can make it more vasey. Once a vase is a vase, it's not, but I made it more of a vase. No, either it is or it's not. You can't be more of a vase. You can't be more or less vasey. Either you are or you're not. Even if you then extend the roof or the bottom of the vase, it was a vase. It was just a puzzle vase. So you can't make it more of a vase. It doesn't become a kosher vase by making it more vasey. Even bigger case. Let's look at number 7. Mezuzos. But instead of writing mezuzos, he wrote machais. So you say, no problem. I made a ches. I'll just take off the roof. You call a roofer and you take off the roof of the ches. So now it's 2 zayin. Let's say ches the makam beis zayin. Loy mahani sheyigur hachartam. It's not going to help to scrape off the nose. V'yisharu beis zayin. Why? Because you didn't do a maisa on the guf of the zayin. What do you mean? I scratched the nose. The nose is not part of the zayin. I didn't do a maisa on the guf of the zayin. But let's say like this in diagram 8. Let's make it bigger. Let's say you need to do an act to be mashlemet. In other words, you're scraping off the nose, but you have to make it into a zayin. So that's okay. Even though Chak Tuchos made the top of the zayin into a zayin, but it didn't become a zayin through your Chak Tuchos. Kain Mavur be'Eben Ezer Siman Kuf Chav Hey Ois Gimel Magen Avram B'Lamed Beis Ois Chav Gimel Aval Tash Sham Pikpei Gaza Ayin Sham Ba'Ois Yud Ve Ayin Le'el B'Lamed Beis Sif Yud Zayin Sif Yud Ches Mavur Sham Hakol Be'Arhete V'Gam Be'Arnu K'tzas Dinei Chak Tuchos B'Chol Ois V'Ois B'Frad Oid Eza Klom B'Al Prim Gan B'Dei Hakafas Kvil. More from the Prima Gana regarding it has to be encircled by parchment had takdim b'Seif HaKuntritz Ayin Sham. So tomorrow, tell your friends, tell your cousins, tell your relatives. Tomorrow we learn Ois Aleph, and maybe if we're good, we'll learn Ois Beis as well. Okay, have a wonderful day. Bracha v'hatzlacha. Kol tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.